Good morning and welcome to the Leadership and Insurance Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond. I'm very lucky to be joined by Simon, who is from Penniio. Simon, we've been talking for about 10 minutes and I'm really embarrassed that I'm thinking Chief Customer Officer is your title. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I nearly got that wrong. I had a moment of brain fog, and I thought I'm pretty sure that is correct. Well, look, Simon, thank you for joining me. And before we jump into the podcast, it'd be great if you could introduce yourself and what Penniio do.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Of course, thank you for having me on. So, as you said, my name is Simon Bentholm. It's very Danish. Sorry about that. So I have a background in behavioral psychology or behavioral economics, if you want, and machine learning, and spent around 15 years on digitizing sales of insurances until I joined Penniio. In Penniio, we have a SaaS platform enabling insurers to put their product on the platform and then basically do embedded insurance digitally. As a plug and play solution that is extremely scalable. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I mean, embedded. I've got to start with this.
Yes.
I think I've spoken about embedded more this year than anyone would ever need to. But we've had multiple players, from the embedded space come on, and. How do you differentiate yourself? What's specifically unique about the Penniio business? Because there are these sort of alternative platforms.
Yes, there surely are. So I would mainly point to two or three things, but the one being we've actually spent a lot of time on how are you doing a digital customer journey that converts. So this is not taking the existing products of insurance or reinsurers and just exposing it online, because people's basic interest in insurance is just it's just a ladder above my death, basically, right? In interest. So you have to how do you design a customer journey where you support a decision process for the end customers, and then of course we've done it for a long time, and that means that we have the data across our platform where we run the split test and stuff like that and figure out what works. So how many pixels should there be of shadow on a CTA for a motor insurance? Wow. I actually know that one, and how much it converts additionally if it's 5 or 3 or 4 pixels. Wow. I tested 1 to 8 pixels, and how much it gives, right? So that's one of the things, and that's coming from a data play and from a behavioral psychology play, and then we build a platform that is extremely scalable. So our basic end goal here is having the best convertible or conversion journey, and then being able to expose it to as many partners, we call them partners or embedders, as possible, because this is, at the end of the day, this is digital. As any digital company would tell you, this is a top funnel game, right? So the more partners, the more impressions, the more you just actually end up with in GVP. So we start out when we get clients as insurance companies or reinsurers in through the door, we actually start on saying, how do we get you to the place where with this product you want to sell now, you want to do embedded insurance with, how do we get that out to 100 partners? And yeah, because we built it that way that the effort for the partners is almost zero. We usually, I think the average time right now is around 42 minutes for a partner to go live, without us having to do anything, or they have to do anything. So that is the IT project of the partner. That's 42 minutes, right? So that of course means, like, all of a sudden you have to think of as an insurer, the only thing you have to worry about is how do you maintain a partner organization that way? How do you handle partner operations, right? And of course we have the platform for doing that, and like you would expect. So that's the two key things, right? So the behavioral and the data supporting it, continuously optimizing across the solutions, and then the scalability. And then I have to say, because that's also a lot on the out there of our competitors are in some way or another owning the risk. I don't know, not all of them are MGAs, but
yes, of course, yeah.
yes. But we're a complete tech company. So we have 50 people and are growing like 200% every year. That wakes up every morning and only thinks about embedded insurance digitally, nothing else. And yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's. I think that's an interesting point actually, because I think some embedded solutions have been built with a different emphasis in mind. Of course, we talked about, you mentioned there, some have been set up with digital MGAs. Obviously, that's a different revenue model. They're achieving different things, and then others have kind of. I almost think that some people have come to the party with the ethos of that. It makes perfect sense to me. I've been in insurance a long time. It makes perfect sense as an added. Either as a proposition to an insurer, of course you want to do this, but also to like e-retailers or something like that, e-commerce. It makes perfect sense to be an add-on revenue stream. But I think they've almost kind of, some people have turned up and gone, well, of course it makes sense, and therefore assuming that it will just fly.
Yeah.
I'm sure people haven't, and I don't want to oversimplify that. That makes me sound very arrogant that I've thought it through and other people haven't. But there certainly doesn't, and sometimes when I've asked that question, which is why I asked that question, was that, sometimes when it's met with a stone wall of silence of, well, what's different? I think if you struggle to articulate it, so that's the worrying time. But building it technology first, is that where you think some of the gaps appear? And I suppose what we're talking about there is being technology first versus being insurance first, because you're not coming to the table going, well, these are our products that we want to sell. Is that where the sort of gaps appear in the market for you then?
Yes, well, more or less, if you want to put it like that. But it means that we carry almost zero legacy, right? And that means that the flexibility and the speed in there is complete, like it's insane compared to everyone else, right? You know that every time you put on a product and you want to do something new with that product, it just gets a little slower and little slower. That's basically the evolution of insurance, right? So yeah, I think that is, but like we're a strong team coming out of insurance technology, but fairly, like we saw a lot of our competitors, if you want to, we tend to say, like, if you have the actual sale of the digital sale of the insurance, and then you have everything that happens beneath, like claim systems and customer relationship management systems and things like that. That we see that a lot of our competitors actually are moving downwards to that, right. And that might be because they need to do it in order to get live. Many insurance companies have actually problem of exposing like basic APIs on the products, right? Or haven't really gotten to that part of the party yet. And our vision from day one was like, all right, if you have the sale, the only thing we're going to do is move upwards, like towards the partner, and maybe even a bit left. So we also can say what does actually mean to attract customers and stuff like that as an embedder, not as an insurer. That's a different thing, right? So we have been extremely clear from the get-go. That's our current CEO who actually said it, I think, 4 years ago in a beach house in a strategy session. We are never moving downwards, and never is like, all right, we might have like a basic database where you can put in transactions and stuff like that, because then you have the capability of actually testing products out without spending €1 million on putting it on the core system, right?
Sure.
But otherwise, apart from that, we will go upwards, because that's the closer you get to the end customer, the better data you get, the closer you get to actually having an impact on the top funnel part of this, which is actually the one that ends up impacting your GVP. So we're extremely focused in everything we do, and this is a crucial point as well, is that we are extremely focused on the technical result of our clients. So basically, this is it's the cost of sales game for us, or for our clients, right? I
was just thinking about sort of distribution there, and your strategy moves it kind of closer to a true partnership, and not just a kind of a gimmick or a distribution play of their existing capacity. It is genuine innovation, genuine opportunities for kind of new products when you approach it in the only going up way versus going down. Going down, that partnership has a different emphasis. Which has its limitations. I've got to ask you.
It has its limitation, but it's of course very, very needed. What we said very early on is we are good at the other part, and we'll stick to what we're good at, and then there will be a lot of different other players doing like flexible claim systems and stuff like that can take the other part, but we'll focus on the part that we're good at and nothing else. I should keep replaying that in my in my own team. So I wanted to talk to you about this very obvious thing is, we started at the top saying there's lots of embedded solutions. It's kind of the buzzword of 2022 for me. I don't want to call it a buzzword, but the theme. You can do that.
I can do it. The theme of 2022. What's driving that? What's driving that for you? Why are we seeing it hit ahead of steam now?
Oh, I think that there's actually multiple answers to that. That there's most cases there's multiple answers to a question, right? So one thing being, of course, you see that the partners, so the embedders in our world, the one that embeds an insurance solution, but it's not risk carrier at all, are seeing in an enormous expansion on every one of their customer interactions being online, right? And historically, most of them have had some sort of insurance add-on, and of course, they cannot have that every interaction is online and digital and stuff like that. And they say, "All right, we have this nice offer for you. Would you please phone us?"
Yeah, right?
And so they cannot have like a worse customer journey for the add-ons, because then the add-on will probably not do very well. So that's one thing around that. Then we see the other thing is like we see the direct business in digital sales. So the insurers and reinsurers putting their own products on their own webpage is something that, like, at least throughout Europe, the last 5 years has been growing insanely big. It has happened a lot. And in Penniio, we have the saying that nobody wakes up in the morning thinking about insurance, right? Well, except us.
I was gonna say.
But normal people like my mom, right? Yeah. Nobody does that. So there's so the basic demand side of supply demand in here, the basic demand side is 2 people around the globe, basically, right? And that doesn't really change, because the insurers are going direct with their own digital solution. But what has happened throughout the last 5 years is that all the insurance companies have 90% of all the insurance companies have done that. So they have overpopulated the supply side, and it's still only 2 people that is on the demand side, right? And who wins on that play? Well, Google, right? So I think most of us know what the AdWords pricing is for different insurance categories, and it's insane, right? It's gotten to the point. I actually talked to a client yesterday in Spain, where if they were to try and sell on their own direct channel, they were better off taking an agent, putting him in the car and drive out to the customer, than they were trying to drive the customer to their own website, right? Because it would be more expensive.
Wow.
And that's just what we are saying. So basically, it makes sense when we are living in this world that it's too expensive digitally to move the customer, because we have low interest products, and we have a high supply side in here. So maybe we'll just move the products to where the customers are digitally. That's basically it.
Yeah. That's fascinating,
then,
actually.
Yeah. And then maybe I actually had a third
please.
point.
No, please.
Because then also I think that in terms of the embedded part of insurance, so that's not going only for digital, but in general, we also see the embedded part growing, right? And I think that on the insurance side comes out of, well, some of the success from North European countries and stuff like that. We see in the Nordics, like we have combined rates that I think most of the rest of the world would be like, if I say that, well, some of our clients up here have combines on their motor insurance at 78, right?
Wow.
Then, well, like, how are you doing that?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that comes from, like, I think that in Denmark alone, I think it's around 60% of our insurances that are sold by non-risk carriers. And
interesting.
Of course, people are looking at that and saying, there's different countries. It doesn't need to be in the Nordics. Other countries actually have this down as well. But it just has a massive impact on the technical result, and that I think that drives it, the change as well.
That's so interesting, because I've asked that question a few times now, and that's probably, well, firstly the most comprehensive answer, but I think we've always gone down the line of, well, technologically we can make it happen now. So that was always kind of the starting point. But I think that second point about, essentially, it's almost like old school. The cost of digital and selling on digital, it's almost like the cost of the high street's got too expensive, that you've got to look at a different way. It's the new version of kind of going online, even though we're talking about online. If Google's the high street, it's so expensive to kind of get prime location that it's not worth being off the high street, because you don't sell anything anyway. So there's no point being on page 3 of your Google results. You're better off kind of trying to find who is on the first page and how can you sell through them. So yeah, that's really interesting to me. I was going to ask this question about threat, and I'd put a question about how much of a threat does embedded insurance pose to traditional insurance market. But I think it's very clear, because of the way that you're kind of building these intense partnerships, that it's not a threat, it's an opportunity. But I suppose, changing that slightly, is there a slight threat in that if their embedded sort of offering is so good, it's so slick, it's so well built, because they're working with partners that are sort of technology first, it kind of poses a threat to their existing offering, or not even a threat, but basically does it demand that they upgrade maybe their sort of existing tech stack, or do you think it has any implications kind of to the kind of broader business of that carrier?
Well, in most of the forecasting I have seen for the next 5 or 6 years, and it's like when you see a forecast from McKinsey, it's like, yeah, somebody came up with this methodology and I don't know how, and they're never presenting the methodology, but never mind. The growth of the digital embedded insurance is not bigger than the growth of the insurance business in general. Sure. So that means that it might not be cannibalizing. It might just be that the rest of the sales channels, the rest of the distribution channels are staying at a status quo. We don't know, but it also it might actually be more to an omni-channel portfolio approach, right? So what we see, it's really, really hard to sell 7 insurances online. If I could put it bluntly, I've actually heard of a company selling 9 insurances in Sweden in a sitting to digitally to an end customer, and they haven't even built the solution for that. So he did it sequentially. It took him like 55 minutes.
Wow.
But we know that when you put insurance offers, or you put products online, then you're selling more one string, and you're not selling full portfolios. You have a lower average product basket, right? So that means, of course, that this is in many cases, doing a sale on one product is a really hot lead for your agent, basically. So you're optimizing that channel as well when you're doing that. So I think it works combined, or it kind of plays out so they don't get that many cold leads and things like that. But what we can see is like that for every other distribution channel you have, the cost of selling the next policy basically is a bit higher, right? So the next agent you put on, he would be a little less effective. We need a little bit better administration around him and stuff like that. The same goes for telemarketing and so forth, right? When you're doing the direct online sales, we also know that the next customer you will drive to your website, it will be you have to pay a little more to Google than the last one you did, right?
Yeah.
And what we see here is the exact opposite. You actually have you have decreasing cost of sales for the next policy. And if you are really good at handling your partner operation as an insurer or reinsurer in here, you can actually have like an exponential decreasing cost of sales in here. And then you figure out, so how do I actually support that and build the other channels to actually work with it instead of, I'm not much for the cannibalizing thing, also because the cannibalizing thing is assuming that there is a fixed market of people taking up exactly this insurance with you today. I think, no, probably not. But if you show it 3 times to them out there, then they might actually come to the conclusion that they need this security.
Because something that just I think the best view on these things is always from a personal level. I just see the new opportunities. There are certain insurances that I do not buy as an individual, and as a business owner, to be fair, that I know you could sell me, but you have to come to me in the right place, and that isn't waiting for me to call you, and that isn't something I'm going to look for. But there are certain embedded opportunities, certainly when I'm buying certain things of the business, when I'm buying certain things for my personal life, I haven't had phone insurance for a decade, but I need it. I mean, my phones are astronomically expensive. I mean,
and they're completely broken 6 days after you.
I've got a smash screen as well, I think. But that's one example. Personal cyber is probably another one, but definitely kind of like additional coverages for my But there are windows of time where you could sell me something, and that's not happening, and that would be in addition to all the insurances I take. So there's definitely kind of additional, especially when you've got kind of with this technology becomes opportunities as well to sell different insurances that I was telling one of my new team members, they couldn't get their head around the fact that there was parametric weather coverage for if you went on holiday and you had worse than expected weather. And they'd just been on a really expensive honeymoon, and they went, I would 100% buy that. I went, of course you would.
Yes.
But it's 1 part education, a 2-part opportunity. Like, I know it exists, you don't, but if you got it for your travel agent, whether it's built in, you'd get it.
And then also it's we have to acknowledge when we are going online that this is it's an attention game, right? So your brain basically has very limited capabilities of taking in information.
You know me very well, Simon. You know me well.
It's I'm sorry. It's nothing to do with you. That's the human race, and our world around us has is exponential growing in how much they want our attention, right? And how do we work with that? Well, we've seen, like, if you'll try to look for some shoes on some sort of website, then the next 3 weeks, even though you bought the shoes, you will get retargeted with those shoes, right? It will come up constantly. But how do we then think in insurance that we'll bother the customer once a year? Then we'll hope we hit the right thing. And we see in our data that for each time we hit the same customer in a year, the probability of that customer converting will grow. And we have up to 32 times in a year and it's still growing. And then I would assume at some point there's a breaking point when it starts going down, but we haven't hit that breaking point. And I'm like, insurance haven't, in most cases, they haven't woken up to that realization yet, that there's probably a reason why retargeting is there. And that is because it works, right? You might not at the same time, well, the exact moment that your telemarketing or your agent decides to call that person, that might not be the right time. So finding the right moment, and of course we see it in every case. The closer you embed your insurance offering to the core, like the goal of the customer. So let's face it, insurance is never a customer's goal. It's some sort of weird add-on that can help me feel pleasure and security in my goal, be that a car, be that a house, whatever. And the closer we embed the insurance to that, the less likely they are to seek out second opinions, the less likely they are, or the more likely they are of actually accepting the offer, and they are actually willing to pay more for it. And this is our data, but I think it's in 2014, the British FCA did live tests online on this and found the same thing.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
They actually have a team of behavioral economics that did that. So that's why I don't know why the rest of the, like, it's 8 years ago. How is that report where they actually publicized this? How is this not mandatory reading for everyone in the insurance industry?
Yeah, I mean, don't. The amount of times I read about, obviously in recruitment, I'm always reading about wars on talent, what people want. Nobody's adjusted any of their recruitment processes, their offering, and it's like, people are saying they don't like the way we structure it in terms of recruitment processes. People have a lovely ignorance of data. From a cultural standpoint, I think there's a huge problem there. I mean, this leads us nicely on to, and we've probably covered some of this, but with your educational background and your background in organizational economics, and how are customers really making decisions when they're buying insurance? Like what is happening there? I suppose that's what we got to get to. And yes. I know obviously different profiles of customers, etc. But kind of what is happening when that's happening?
So there's a lot of things happening, but I will try to give some simple examples, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing is, of course, that when we have basic no interest in this, then if people are presented with, and this is nothing to do with segmentation or cultural, this is how we are structured as a human race. If we are presented with something that looks hard and we don't see an upside in terms of our survival, basically, in it, then we're just going to say, nah, that's not going to happen. That's why I always think of insurance as the perfect procrastination product. Like, I know culturally, I've been taught I should have this. But when it pops up, like, nah, not really. And then I hit the red cross, and I'm not saying I don't need insurance. I'm just saying I'm going to do it tomorrow. Yeah. And then tomorrow I'm going to do the same, and blah 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 blah. Right? Yeah. So that's one thing. So in there, for each question you are asking in the quoting process, I tend to use this as an example. It's not the perfect data, but I'm not going to reveal the perfect data. But for each question you're asking in the quoting process, you're actually killing off 50% of the potential customers for each question.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you then get to the binding process of it, so now people have actually seen the price, they have chosen what kind of coverages they want. Now you're at the binding process. Now it's 25% instead, right? Now they have gotten to a point where most of them can see what's in it for me. In the quoting part, they're like, yeah, I really don't have any interest in delivering perfect underwriting data for the insurers. I don't see why I have an interest in that. I know people are not thinking like that, but that is basically what happens, right? And that also means, like, when you put your processes of quote and bind online, like if you remove, I'm not saying changing underwriting, but if you remove a quoting question and say like 80% of our customers are choosing this or are answering like this, and then ask them to confirm it in the binding process instead, you will see a huge increase in conversions.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's it's like working with the current underwriting, because we never propose to change underwriting, because then we know that it's 24 months later and we never got anything live, right?
Yeah.
But you can actually restructure it. So you can fire default stuff. You can ask them in different ways and things like that. So that's like that part. And then you have, like, when you get to a product, people don't know what they need. Of course they don't. Like, in most cases, just pick up your average friend, or I always say my mom. If I need to be able to present an insurance offer that she can take up.
Yeah.
Right? She's nice and sweet old lady, but she knows fuck all of insurance. Right? And if I can hit her, if she can understand what she's taking up, she can actually make a decision around it. Then I'm gonna hit everyone. Right? That's actually good. So most people don't know, and what insurers tend to do is play on the one thing that they can do. That's the price, right? But more likely than not, we see that in every other business. We've seen it for 50 years in every other business, like presented as 3 different packages. And I assure you that 80% will choose the middle one. And it's not because it has the perfect price or it has the perfect coverages, but it's actually because they're doing a mental process saying, oh, this is the small one. That's probably not good enough for me. And this is the big one. That is way too big for me, right? So they end up in the middle one. And we see that even when we change it. So we propose to put in an even bigger one, and then we take out the small one. Then it's the new middle one, right? So it's nothing to do with coverage price ratio in here. It's actually the mental process. That's the same way you're buying coffee or software, right? And it's basically the same mental process they're doing, because this is what they have to hang their decisions on. Yeah. So.
No, sorry, please.
Yeah,
I just had to. Is that why? Well, you may or may not know this answer. I mean, this is not an insurance question, but I was like, about software. Is that why we quite often have the freemium model? Because you've got the freemium, then you've got the kind of like entry level paid for, and then you've got the advanced, which is usually really expensive. And most users will go, well, I'll pay for the minimum usage case, because then it's an easy conversion, because it's like Actually, that's 2 psychological mechanics at work at the same time, because most would probably go with the freemium. That's the drug dealer psychological effect, right? First fix is free. Yeah, or the one Ryanair uses, right? You actually want to sit down? Then we'll add 20 euros, right? You want to go to the toilet? 5 euros on top of that. Yeah. So that's another psychological effect. But yeah, it's messed up in some cases. But we see it very clear in these cases with insurances. And then there's really, really ordinary stuff, as we know that the human brain processes 0s and 5s way faster than any other things, any other numbers, right? That's just the case. So if the insurance is hard to understand and the process of taking up the insurance is hard to understand, there's a high probability that people are going to say, nah, I'm not today. But if you can make the process easy, right? And one of the things you have to process is the numbers in here. And please let it end on a 0, right? And we actually we see, so insurers want to calculate the exact risk, right? Micro tariffing, everything. I'm like, yeah, probably not. We've tried this, and it's really, really steady result on if you're ending on 0 or 5, which is a bit higher conversion rate on everything. Fascinating. I'm gonna sort my pricing out. It comes. I suppose what I think this comes into a little bit as well is one of the problems insurance has is with trust. And I'm quite interested about the kind of conversation about trust and embedded insurance, because the classic one is flights, right? So whenever I book a flight, I'm always offered my travel cover. Like I'm one of these, one of these people that used to have worldwide travel cover all the time because I travel quite a lot. Hasn't been needed, so I haven't bought it as much. But I'm one of these people, I would never buy it from an airline. There's a trust thing, mainly about me not getting the right price. How do we overcome those sorts of kind of hurdles, or do we not? I'm just someone that they're not going to sell to?
So that might be one thing, but
Yeah.
I think what you're asking me here is how do we fix the trust issues of airlines? And I don't know how to do that. Because of course, when you're doing embedded, the brand you're embedded with and their trust level is the key here, because people don't like, they're not that they're not that concerned with brands as people tend to be, right? So they don't like, all right, then through this I got an insurance with that, right? That's like, yeah, I bought a phone and got insurance with it. That's the same brand basically in their perception, right?
Yeah.
So of course it's the trust of the embedder that's the important part in here. Yeah, don't tell the insurance companies about that. They love the brand. So,
well, I thought that because I'm pretty confident. I'm sure EasyJet's like Allianz or something, but and even knowing what I know about insurance, and knowing that it's the coverage is probably pretty good, and knowing enough about insurance, I could probably read through it and work out whether it's right for me. I'm just like, no, I'm not going to buy it here. I'm going to go onto some. I'm going to go to a comparison site. I'm going to run that through, and I suppose that's the challenge. I think one of the kind of pushbacks I personally had emotionally about talking about embedded insurance was exactly this: that you're borrowing the not borrowing, but you're utilizing the brand that you're embedding with. So like that's where you're buying it from, and so it's interesting. Yeah,
but that's actually a key point. So when we started out, we started looking as well. We did a lot of things, but we started actually looking at what is the motivation and the expectations of the embedders throughout the world, the partners in here. And it turns out we weren't able to find a single solid study on it. That's interesting as a starting point, right? That we couldn't find a single solid study on it. So we actually ended up doing ourselves one for Europe. It's like we asked, I can't remember how many European embedders. So what is your motivation? What are you looking for? Blah, 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 blah. A lot of different questions, got them in and crunched the numbers in there. And it actually turns out that I think it was around above 70%, I can't remember the exact numbers, were of course their motivation is that the additional revenue stream. Now, let's not kid anyone, right? But the exact same amount of percentage, somewhat 70s, said that the motivation was retention. And that's actually crucial. So what you're offering as a partner is like you add trust to your basic offering when you do say like, so this is so good that we want to insure it as well, and we want you long-time relationship with you and blah 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 blah. So it's not like borrowing or stealing the trust of the embedder. It's more coming together in that way. So it's almost to the point where you like cradle to grave or handling the entire ecosystem around the product you're selling, right? So if
as you're saying that, my mind's immediately going back to those kind of, because when I naively heard about these weather coverages, for example, good weather parametric embedded solution, I was like, oh well, would you buy that? It'd be really expensive. And then I've missed the point. Is that no, you probably won't buy it, but if you go and buy a top end honeymoon package, it's almost certainly going to be included, because they'll go, oh, we want you to have a great time. We're going to ensure you have the best weather that you're hoping for, and it gives you then another opportunity to be creative with your products, and with creative with your partners. It's like, right, what can we do now around retention that insurance can offer as, and the banks have obviously been doing this for years. You paid for bankage. I mean, yeah, well, last time I probably had that phone coverage is when I had a paid for bank account and doing all those sorts of things. So, have you? This is a sort of off the cuff. Have you seen anything particularly innovative in terms of products that's quite new and unique that's utilize kind of your technology? That's kind of stood out?
I can. So I'm starting at another point, then I get to the point, right? So around the weather part, I think you are underestimating how much the actual vacation is worth in more, it's worth in more categories than money, right? So
course,
I know it's not widely spread, the offer of doing that, but what is in there is, of course, not only the pricing of the insurance versus the pricing of the actual vacation, but it's actually also like people saying, I have 1 or 2 vacations a year, right? So that is what I'm betting here. That is what I'm trying to cover. That is like, if it's raining, when I have that one week in Spain, right, and it's raining, then I actually need the money to go do something awesome with the kids indoor. And that's what they're covering. That's the 1 vacation a year, not the actual money in here.
Sure. Fair.
And we actually see this, that like when we see on all our variables throughout customer journeys and stuff like that, and like do a multi-dimensional regression analysis, then the pricing is really, really, really not the most important part of whether or not you're going to sell. It's far from the most important part. What we see is actually and this is a proxy, but we see the URL of your embedding is the most important part of how you are performing as an embedder. And come back to that, that's basically your placement, right? So the placement within different customer journeys. And now you mentioned, like, if you buy an expensive honeymoon with all inclusive and also like a bundled, what we call a bundle insurance in there. But then all of a sudden, as an insurer, you're limited to doing only insurance sales when a transaction happens through a partner and with a partner and end customer. But what we actually see is one of our top performing solution is an embedment that is placed within editorial content. And it's not linked to any sort of transaction between the embedder and the end customer. But within that editorial content, it actually says, all right, so if you want to take up the best way to take up the most optimal motor insurance, right? That is to go out in the market, right? Test with 5-6 different players, play them out against each other, and then it goes through how you should do it step by step. And then in between there is our little solution saying you could also just put in your license plate, your age and your address, and you will get the price. And that is performing insanely great. And I don't know, because I haven't done any like solid split testing on it, but I think it's because exposing the journey of what you should do if you want to get the best product for the cheapest version is putting some authority or trust into, but we are willing to expose our product right here and you can get it done in 3 minutes, right? But I don't know. But it's just really important that when you're thinking embedded insurance, like we have the scale that we say we have from related and or overlinked to bundle. So when we say bundle, that's the one you mentioned. That's a honeymoon where it's in the price, right? But then you have, as an insurer, your customer database is the same as the amount of customer taking up the honeymoon offer, right? And then you have the linked one, that's for your phone or something else. Like you're buying a product that you can do a checkbox and say, I want this one. That's the one Amazon runs, right? And in here, you are dependent on a transaction happening between the partner and the end customer. And then you have the related one, which we actually see as performing the best right now. Not in conversion rate, because it's actually a parallel customer journey within the partner universe. But what can happen here is, of course, you can hit your customer base with this post-sale, pre-sales. You can do it 5 times a year. Some digital partners struggle to have actual offers to give to tell people that they have in the newsletters every month and stuff like that. So that's why you don't need the transaction, and that actually increases so it lowers your conversion rate, but the amount of people going top funnel is wildly increased, right?
Interesting. Genuinely something that I wasn't aware of. I think with embedded, I was always thinking either bundled or linked, and I didn't think about the fact that you've got these parallel journeys that people go on. I think there's a whole hour more podcast I could ask you about that, but I don't want to overstay my welcome, so I won't. So I'll end on we were starting this conversation actually, which we didn't record, which is about it's always important to know what you don't know, and I've discovered something I didn't know about embedded, which is great considering how much we talked about it. So Simon, this has been an absolute pleasure. I won't overstay our welcome. So thank you very much for being a guest. That was genuinely really super interesting. But I always like to finish on you being able to kind of tell us what's happening this year in 2022 for Penniio. Any particular kind of announcements that you're able to make or willing to make or want to make? This is that window of time. What's coming up?
Well, we're basically just putting a 3x in front of all our numbers this year.
Simple.
Yes, that's easier, right?
That's my target this year as well. So let's hope we both get there. But that's brilliant. Thank you, Simon. Appreciate your time, and thanks for being a guest on the Leadership and Insurance podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.